Welcome to the Scott Holland Podcast, back for the first time in the 2024 calendar year, back for not the first time in this athletic season, maybe a little bit of a line-up of an episode here, a couple sports in season, a little off-season stuff to talk about, and I am excited on the free feed to rejoin you, my two friends and my two hosts for the first time in like about three, actually, I think it's 3 weeks to the day to the last time that I was on here in the free feed, so I will not filibuster here in terms of passing off to you guys, but I will give some quick explanation as to my absence. I've been hired as no. I did the drive back from, I did a wonderful visit out to Texas, including but not limited to seeing you, Dustin, and many other friends and family while I was out in the state of Texas. Great trip. On the 23rd, my significant other and I made the decision, we're just going to drive all the way through to get back, which at the time, especially in the closing stage of that drive, we were like, is this going to be a bad decision? Like I've done some long drives. I've done some long drives with you two, quite frankly. Dustin, also including but not limited to driving straight back through the night from the round of 32 game in Tulsa back to where we were living in Central Texas. And this was like 7 hours on top of that. And got home at 4:15 Pacific time to find the roof of the ceiling of my living room leaking significantly, large poolings of water on my living room floor, and just feeling as defeated as I ever have in my adult life. Just being like spending the last 4 hours of this drive looking forward to just throwing my suitcases in the living room, just crashing for the next 9 hours, and knowing within a minute of getting home that surely was not going to be a possibility for many, many hours. So that's why I haven't been here. And thankfully, not my fault. Thankfully, as damages go, it could have been much, much worse. If we had stayed the night, I might not ever have a place. I might have been a situation where my residence was a total loss. So as much as nobody in the middle of something like this wants to consider the things they're fortunate about, I haven't lost sight of the things I'm fortunate about, including but not limited to, saying it for the third time this intro, being joined by you two, my friends. Dustin, how have you been doing here these last couple weeks, my friend?
Well, I've had some light allergies, so basically you and me are in the same boat in terms
I think
of
so, yeah.
what we've been going through recently. No, doing well. Excited to be coming to everyone in the calendar year 2024 as we continue to march forward with this podcast, and excited to be having basketball get into to Big 12 season as we're going to talk about. So that's very, very exciting to me. So looking forward to the next couple of months from that program for sure.
Our 10th calendar year of doing a podcast. Bobby, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's the most Monday of Tuesdays today, just kind of getting back to everything and just I work in retail and go out and visit stores and that kind of stuff. And on Sunday I was like, I gotta go. I just gotta get back in stores and I gotta get back the feeling of being in stores and doing that kind of stuff. So trying to transition a little bit easier, make it not so rough today, but back at it today and yeah, ready to talk some Cougar sports.
Hey guys, on the 2nd of January, I had like clients I haven't heard from in 2 weeks, really wanting to follow back on some stuff that,
Ugh, the
despite the
worst.
fact I was in the office for most of the last 2 weeks, including the holidays. So the joy that we are all experiencing here, including those of you listening, and some other joy that I've experienced listening, is putting out a couple more Patreon exclusive episodes. Took a little break from the free feed, but very proud of the 2 episodes we just put out. Bobby and I did a deep dive on the 2024 football signing class, high school guys, junior college guys, transfer guys. We really just dived down in the class, I think, longer than our regular episode format affords, though I will use this opportunity to say that I personally got to, as a listener, a rare occasion, really enjoy your guys' breakdown of the signing class last podcast. Very, very much appreciate that. But you want to go a little deeper, listen to Bobby and I on that one. And I also did a solo preview of the Big 12 men's basketball conference and season so far and what those teams have looked like through roughly 2 months of non-conference play. We can expect all that good stuff. So you can go to patreon.com/shpodcast, get access to that, as well as Dustin and I's various off-season football trackers. Dustin is doing a great job on the football by position Google Doc. I think the best endorsement is
Just updated a couple hours ago to reflect Jalen Garth entering the portal. Not to get ahead of ourselves here.
Nice. I think the best endorsement is that I used it actually to put some off-season football notes together for the show. You could do as well. Also, I've done myself a little kind of incoming and outgoing thing just for Division One transfers, just as that's become much more of a thing in terms of roster building. So that's a nice little easy reference thing as well. All of that for as little as 16 cents a day at patreon.com/SHPAWDcast. And of course, gotta also mention our good friends at the 1012 Network at TEN12 Network, wherever you decide to social media. I was gonna say social media, wherever you decide to social media. I'm gonna use this as a verb here and make various grammarians very upset around the world. That's TEN12 Network, our good Big 12 network friends there. And of course, got to mention our good friends Charlie Hustle, charliehustle.com, makers of incredibly comfortable vintage wearables, a great Cougar collection, a great collection of a number of collegiate programs out there, Big 12 partners as well, some cool Big 12 specific merch from our friends. It's been really cool to see them kind of have their come up these last few months as well. And it's been a really cool part of, I think, this current season of the show to have them as our new primary sponsors here. But great Cougar collection. Check that out. You're going to be the hit of your section at the Fertitta Center and your tailgate next fall. It's charliehustle.com. And of course, use our promo code SHP15, SHP15. That's going to save you 15% off your order, not even your first time order. If you are a repeat Charlie Hustle customer, you could dip back into that well and use our wonderful promo codes. That's Charlie Hustle, charliehustle.com. Quick little football news hitter I think we're going to start with here. And we've got some good news in the portal front. I almost said portal front there. I almost spoonerized myself here less than 1 minute into talking about the actual Cougar news. But Isaiah Hamilton quietly entering and then withdrawing from the portal, I would say definitely qualifies as good offseason news. Isn't that right, guys?
Yeah, I'm excited to have him apparently on the team heading into next year. It's a little funny. I'm only like 80% convinced he ever was in the portal because there was only ever like one guy that said so, and I never saw anything like officially confirmed. And then I think there's like the source number 2 had it, then like hours later, it was like, oh no, but he's out now. So it was kind of a weird situation where I was never like 100% convinced he was in the portal. I guess he was and he withdrew, but either way, I'll take it. I'll take the fact that he is not in the portal now is good. Getting him back, and certainly some of the other as part of a cornerback group that kind of like we talked about in the with after the post signing day episode, how I'm starting to actually kind of like that cornerback group, but a big part of that was having Isaiah Hamilton back after an encouraging first season at the FBS level, and really thinking that he could, he had I think a good season, but could even build on that and have, you'd hope your second year in FBS, you're a little more used to it, a little bit older at a position where being older helps quite a bit. So I think it's really key to get him back, and really underscores what a knock on all the wood, but what a fantastic job the staff has done up until this point in terms of keeping most of the key guys from last year's team around.
Yeah, that was actually going to be the point I was going to say, Dustin, is that him sticking around shows what a great job Fritz and company are doing in terms of keeping talent here. A lot of times when you see a transfer or a new coach, a lot of people leave, and we just haven't seen a ton of guys just leave the program and decide to join the portal. There's been some, obviously, but it seems like Fritz has really been able to come in and convince guys to stay. And I honestly, if I'm with you, I'm not sure if Isaiah Hamilton ever actually entered the portal. It was just kind of a sketchy thing that you kind of saw, like, hey, it's going to happen, but he never took U of H off of his profile, none of that. And then it comes out that he removed himself from the portal. But again, he's never said anything, so I don't really know. It's kind of weird. But for me, Isaiah Hamilton staying is one of the best recruiting pickups we got, right? You thought you kind of lost him with that one report, whether you believed it or not, but then managing to keep him and getting him to stay, that's a pretty big get for the Fritz staff.
I'm comfortable saying he was U of H's best cornerback this past season. Certainly the only one who I think we saw occasionally make plays after week 1. Maybe there are other good returning cornerbacks on this roster, but Hamilton's the only guy I can talk myself into looking definitively better, not just in a second year at the FBS level, but maybe with a better defensive scheme around him. Just echoing what you guys said, there's still time left in this portal window and the one during the spring for guys to leave. But I'm allowing myself to feel good about the job the new staff has done keeping the roster largely together. I mean, right now at this moment as we record, UH has 11 guys who are either committed to another program as Division I transfers or in the portal and currently uncommitted. And if you want to compare to that number, since he has 22 guys in the portal, K-State, who's coming off a successful season, has 15. UCF, another ASU, the Big 12 newcomer, who certainly had a more successful 23 season than U of H, has 14 guys in the portal. Heck, last year's U of H team had 21 guys ultimately enter when it was all said and done. So I'm not saying U of H won't have more transfers, but certainly not a bad thing that the new staff has gotten some initial buy-in from the holdover guys. We did have one outgoing player in the portal side of things, Jalen Garth, a backup offensive lineman for the Cougs, announced since we last recorded that he would be entering. It's been entered officially since his statement of intention to do so. If you'll recall, he joined the program during fall camp in 2022, set out that season as a result for how late he transferred in, appeared in 7 games this year as a reserve, though I don't know if I ever saw him break the official 2 deeps we got. He did play 2 seasons, or 2.5, I guess, seasons with the UT Austin football program as well. I mean, best of luck to the guy. If you couldn't consistently crack this season's O-line 2 deep, I'm not sure you're cut out for Big 12 football, which, I mean, harsh assessment. I'm sure he'll find a Division I landing spot, but I think that's all I can say about Jalen Garth, because that's all we saw from Jalen Garth.
Yeah, a guy, never started a game, only kind of some minimal backup use on an offensive line that wasn't real great. So again, like if the staff knows him and thinks, hey, he's was a talented recruit, we can still get something out of him, like, great. But am I gonna stress out about him hitting the portal? I am not. You talked about the total number of guys that are outgoing, and we talked about it, right at the beginning. We came up before the transfer portal even started, just to kind of give ourselves an honest assessment. We came up with, it was a list of ultimately 17 players that we would have been really disappointed to, at least some of the disappointed to see them leave, and thus far 4 of them are outgoing. So like that is remarkable to me. If that number was 6 or 7, I'd probably still be pretty happy. I would feel like that was a pretty good return. For it to be 4 at this point, with the portal closing for a while, does it close already now for a while, or is it about to close? I think in a couple days. I forget.
Yeah, I think yeah,
I think.
Yeah,
Okay.
that sounds right to me, Sam. I'm not 100% on it, but that sounds right.
Same.
And again, knock on wood, maybe we'll see, 3 guys we liked hit the portal tomorrow, but am I sad to see Golden leave? Yeah. Am I sad to see Dot leave? Yeah. If you could have told me, okay, those 2 guys are going to leave, but otherwise you're going to hold on to most of everyone that you like, then okay. I think I would take that.
Yeah, and for me, one of the things you said, Sam, is that, like, it's not over yet. The portal's not done. And spring practice can come around, and maybe Fritz, rather than just looking at guys on tape, can look at them in person and go, you know what? Maybe you're not gonna play here, and we lose a couple of more guys that way, while he brings in some people. But losing an O-lineman, never good, just because we are pretty shallow there. But it does say something that our recruiting class came in and he goes, maybe I'm not going to be breaking into this line like I thought I was heading into next year. So maybe we are going to get a little bit of depth on the O-line this year.
He saw Dakota White and Jake Wiley's tape, and he's just like, no way I'm competing with these guys. That's definitely what happened. Yeah.
All right, we did also mention real quick before we get to the in-season hoops. Cougar volleyball also making a transfer addition this past week. They brought in setter Paige Bernstein from Gardner-Webb. You remember the Cougars ran a 2-setter platoon this past season with Annie Cook and the now graduated or out of eligibility Morgan Yonda. That's in difference to most schools that kind of have one primary setter. So we've been speculating, will Houston run mostly 1-setter, or will they kind of do the 2-setter platoon again next year? And I still don't know that I know the answer to this. Paige Bernstein was the leading, she was the starting setter. They led the team in assists and was, I believe, 4th in digs, also playing some defense for Gardner-Webb there. But Gardner-Webb is a kind of a lower level mid-major, not like a real top 100 type of team. So whether that means, and she is a junior, so she has 2 years of eligibility left, whereas Annie Cook has 1. So does this mean she's platooning with Cook next year? I think that's possible. Does this mean that she's kind of the backup behind Cook next year and then maybe is in contention for a starting spot her senior year? That feels possible too. So not quite sure, exactly what we're going to see from her next year, but you want to have at least one other setter on your roster with some experience in case, just injuries or something like that. So I think good to see the Cougs adding some depth if nothing else. Yeah.
A little bit of a homecoming for, I'm sorry, Sam, just gonna mention a little bit of a homecoming for her. She's from the Woodlands. So Another prime example of U of H in pretty much every sport, maybe not getting everybody they want right after they graduate from high school, but you go out, you try you try food in other places, and then you realize how great the food scene in Houston is, and you want to come back home. So I really think this is an indication just going forward of how this athletic program as a whole is really going to function with the transfer portal, what it is.
I was just gonna add, she was actually she was a couple years behind her, but she was actually a teammate of Annie Cook at College Park High in the Woodlands. Quick aside, also, just like College Park High is now sent like 3 different athletes to U of H athletics with Quentin Grimes, Annie Cook, and now our new arrival here.
Yeah, I think it's a all around strong athletic school, high school. So good to have that pipeline to a local school like that, and excited to see what certainly Cougar volleyball has in store in 2024. But we'll move right along with the in-season sports. The 2 basketball teams that are Houston's 2 current in-season teams, and the men's team, unsurprisingly, did not have too tough of a time with Penn this past week, beating the Quakers 81-42. No Juwan Roberts in this one, didn't play, kind of got banged up in the Texas State game, and then has just kind of been banged up a lot this season, it seems like, in the staff. I think it's one of those, if it had been a big game, if it had been a conference game, he'd have been out there, but they decided to go ahead and just give him a rest before conference play began. And as it turns out, Houston decidedly did not need him because they started the game on an 18-0 run. With the Quakers finally getting their first points with under 11 minutes left in the first half. And then even when they finally started going, I mean, the Cougars just dominated both halves, dominated all 40 minutes of this one. The 25-4 edge and points off turnovers, and the 44-14 edge and points in the paint kind of tell you the story in this one. Penn's guards couldn't keep Houston out of the lane, and they couldn't hold on to the ball, and Penn's bigs had no chance of hanging with Javier and JoJo, even with Wani sitting out in this one.
Yeah, that U of H beat Penn and beat them decisively. Not really a surprise. U of H was a 27.5 point Vegas favorite, but like the quickness, the ferocity with which U of H squeezed the life out of this game early, it was really impressive. And I think it's worth noting that before this one, Penn had played 3 other Ken Pop top 100 teams, Nova, St. Joe's, Kentucky. Now those 3, 1 was a win, and 2 were losses where the margin in that game never got worse than low double digits. I looked it up. The worst margin in any game Penn had faced this season was 19 points to Kentucky, and U of H was up 18-0 in the first 10 minutes of this game. It took Penn over 9 minutes of regulation to get a basket, and even after they started occasionally scoring, the deficit never got closer than 19 points in the first half, and the Cougs just ran away with it even more in the second. This was Penn's lowest scoring output in the current season by a margin of 19 points. Even with, for all intents and purposes, I mean, the second half was largely garbage time, and even then, the Cougs still ran away with this one by a margin that even kind of surprised me. Like I would have figured this would be somewhere around the spread, somewhere between like 25 and 29. I think Penn's slightly better than I think the lowest dregs of the Cougs non-conference. And it looked like almost like these teams were playing different sports sometimes. It was really impressive. Like, you don't have to be impressed that U of H beat Penn in the abstract, but I think you should be impressed how decisive this was. That I don't think Penn's going to get outplayed. I don't think Penn's going to get outplayed like this, even remotely, in Ivy League play this year. I think that was just, and that was missing a starter. That was missing one of your most veteran starters in Roberts, like you pointed out, Dustin. Gonna shout out JoJo Tugler stepping in for Roberts, who was wisely held out of this game. I know Kelvin Sampson said in a recent media availability he's not a big load management guy. He's if you're healthy enough to play, you play. But I really do think you get so much more value out of this game in seeing what JoJo Tugler can do in the situation versus any risk of exacerbating the various physical ailments that Wani's trying to work through. And also, I'm trying to stay grounded in the present because this current year's team is one that everyone should be massively excited about. But it's hard not to watch Tugler and think about how so many other guys in this program before him have really progressed and developed under the staff, and kind of fast forward to 2 years and think about, oh man, what is junior year JoJo Tugler going to look like? Because he's already pretty freaking good as a freshman. Like, what is this guy going to look like with a couple more years working with this staff? Like, I think it was one of those games where he's like, okay, 13 points, 7 boards, 2 blocks, 2 steals. It's good. It's good by any definition. And I still feel like if you watch this game, I think he had an even greater impact than that. And I had high expectations of this guy coming in, but he just continues to exceed them. And that was kind of my first big takeaway from this one.
Yeah, mine was kind of looking at the box score after the game. Penn's top scorer scored 10 points. The most one player got was 10. If he would have had enough rebounds, he would have barely got a double-double. Like, that's insanity to me. 10 points, 10 points in one game, and that was their leading score. So that was one of my first takeaways from it. My second takeaway is kind of looking at Ramon Walker Jr.'s stat line here. Played 24 minutes, didn't score a point, 1 assist, 6 rebounds. If you're playing 24 points and you don't score a single bucket, coach is impressed with something you're doing, right? You're doing something besides putting the ball in the bucket that coach is excited about, whether that's good defense, whether that's 6 rebounds, whatever it is, you're doing something that Coach Sampson is excited about and likes to see. So for me, while I know basketball and I watch basketball, I'm not anywhere near, just like we say with football, anywhere near what Sampson and our coaches think about it. But clearly Ramon Walker was doing something to justify 24 minutes with 0 points.
Yeah, and I think Walker is kind of auditioning for the minutes that Terrence Arsenault leaves with his injury, right? And that's kind of Terrence too, right? Terrence was a guy who could go out there and give you 16, 20 minutes, but didn't have to score a bunch of points to make an impact in the game because he got the rebounds, because he was playing the defense, because he was just doing all the little things to kind of make the team better that don't necessarily show up in the box score. So I think that is, a good thing for Ramon getting those minutes, and because he's someone that, him and or Malik Wilson are going to have to take those Terrence Arsenault minutes the rest of the year, as we know. You kind of mentioned it, Sam. I just that's kind of my last point here is like, we said in the preview, like Penn's been really up and down, right? They had the insane 2-game sample where they beat Villanova and then lost to just like a 300 plus ranked like D1 team that last I checked hadn't beaten a single other D1 team, but like had gotten clobbered in every other game, turned around and beat this Penn team. So like, yeah, they're up and down. But yeah, I mean, their 2 best teams they played, they beat Villanova and they were within 4 points of Kentucky with less than 10 minutes to go.
Yeah.
Like, and Houston rested one of their most important players and just embarrassed them. Like I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. You probably, if you listen to this podcast every week, you know what I'm about to say. It doesn't matter how badly you beat the bad teams. What matters is beating the good teams. But goddamn, it is just remarkable and breathtaking to watch them play a team that's not terrible. This is not a 300 plus ranked team. This is like a decent D1 team, and just embarrassing them. It's remarkable.
I didn't have this in my notes, but I looked this up while you guys were talking. The 42 points allowed, not even top 3 for fewest opponent like points outputs, like a non-conference. And again, like I know some of these are against not the strongest teams, but most teams aren't doing that even against like the not best Division 1 team. Most good-ish teams are winning by 10, 15, 20 points, and they feel pretty good about not having to stress about the game late, whereas this one was over by, at the absolute latest, the second media timeout. Just really, really impressive. Guys, shout out also LJ Cryer, surpassing 1,000 career college points in this one between his time at U of H and Baylor. Don't know if it's possible over the rest of the season and the next, but here's to another 1,000 points at this level from LJ. And, again, I think now that this game's over and just looking at non-conference as a whole, we've said it now, all of us, a few different ways, but it's been incredible how dominant this team has been. Yes, you were down early to Utah and A&M, but really led those games nearly the entirety after overcoming that early deficit. You led wire to wire against a Dayton team that I'm pretty confident is giving the field of 68, and led almost wire to wire in the road against a Xavier team that I'm less confident is going to be in the field of 68, but I'm confident it's still going to be a solid resume win when it's all said and done. I mean, other than maybe, guys, I don't know, the first halves against like A&M, Corpus, and Jackson State, where the Cougs let those opponents hang around a bit, I can't think of too many moments in non-conference against a outmatched opponent where I was like, this team's sleepwalking. This team isn't just absolutely crushing this opponent. In those 2 games I just mentioned, Jackson and Corpus, both ended up being 30-plus point wins, so not really much to quibble with there. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is this team looks pretty good, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just gonna say the running joke with because like my partners watched a lot of the UH games either in person or on TV with me, and like our running joke for this season is just like it'll be 50-26, and we're like, we're not even doubling them up anymore. Come on, like what is this team doing? And just like, and again, like we, other than the first 3 teams we played and then Jackson State, like the other 9 games we played are against at least top 200 teams, like, and with the 4 top 100 teams, it's not like we're playing a complete bunch of schmucks. Like we are not scraping the bottom of the D1 barrel at all. And we are just like, like doubling teams up and just like nonsense like that. So it has been pretty remarkable to watch.
Yeah, you get on Twitter. We refuse to call it X here on the SH podcast. You get on Twitter, and one of the things that kind of drives me crazy is how we, as U of H fans, sometimes try to justify our existence in the Big 12 and that we're actually a good basketball program despite 4 straight Sweet 16s. But anyways, I love that, especially fans in a certain Midwest state really like to say we haven't played anybody. And it's like, okay, fine. Even if you say we haven't played anybody, despite the fact we have 4 quad 1 wins, nobody beats their nobodies like we do. Like we're at least destroying our nobodies. Like if you want to say we haven't played anybody, we're still doubling them up, like Dustin said. Like we're just playing really good basketball. It doesn't matter who you play. You're doubling teams up. Those guys are on scholarship too. And so that's just kind of the funny thing for me so far. It's just like, oh, wait a minute. You're saying we're not playing anybody. We have 4 quad 1 wins, but like we're dominating these teams we're playing.
Might be a certain blue and red school, maybe. Just guessing.
A certain school that might not want you to know that they played 326 ranked Eastern Illinois.
And let them hang around, yep.
A team worse than any team on Houston's schedule and beat them by single digits. That's probably...
Yeah, that one, yes.
What we're talking about? Okay.
Maybe.
Just checking.
In theory.
Well... Houston playing basketball in the Big 12 conference has long been a theory, and exactly how Houston is going to do is something that people have a lot of theories about, to make a flawless segue here. But guys, on Saturday, we got our first actual data point, our first non-theoretical, honest to goodness, Big 12
Let's go.
men's conference basketball game when Houston hosts West Virginia. And the Mountaineers have been having an understandably tough time of it. Over the offseason, their head coach kept doing dumb shit until he got fired for doing too much dumb shit, I think is a pretty succinct summary.
Did he?
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
And then from a personnel standpoint, it's been a nightmare. Big man Cook collapsed during an October exhibition. Undisclosed medical condition. He's since been cleared to play and has appeared in their last 6 games. High-profile transfers: Kirk Risa, Raekwon Battle, and Noah Farrakhan all missed the first 9 games of the season. The latter 2 are only eligible now as 2-time transfers due to the much written about NCAA court ruling. And then right as everybody else was getting healthy and eligible, finally, key senior forward Jesse Edwards broke his wrist in mid-December and was supposed to be out for about 4 weeks. So with all of that going on, it's maybe somewhat understandable that they enter Big 12 play with a 5-8 record, that they have losses to teams like Monmouth and Radford, and why Ken Palm says they're the 125th best team in the country, when every other Big 12 team besides Oklahoma State is at least 50 spots better than that. But I think it's hard to say whether or not they're the 125th best team. And like, honestly, right in this moment, I think if I had to pick the team that finishes last in the Big 12, I probably would take Oklahoma State or UCF before West Virginia, specifically because they've had so few games with all their players available, right? We are just kind of now seeing what kind of team that they are, because they're just kind of finally getting 3 of their key players like into the swing of a season. And notably, in their final non-conference game, they took a good Ohio State team to overtime in I believe it was a neutral site location.
Yeah, it's in Cleveland,
and getting Battle eligible in particular has been a game changer. He scored 29, and 24 points in his 3 games with just 4 total turnovers, and has 14 rebounds and 8 steals in that stretch as well. They do need to get Edwards back to full strength. The guy that I mentioned, their forward who got injured, he's the best rebounder on a kind of mediocre rebounding team and their best overall interior defender. So I think that's a big miss for them coming into the Fertitta Center on Saturday. But nonetheless, that Ken Pom projected 23-point win for Houston feels like a lot. I don't know that Houston wins by 23. This feels like, again, a team that Houston should beat, certainly at home. But I think a more dangerous team than maybe a quick glance at their resume might indicate. Bobby, am I wrong? Are you feeling even remotely worried about this one?
I wouldn't say that I'm feeling worried about it, but I would say I think you're right about the 23 points being a bit high. If I were a betting man, which I definitely am not, as my co-host, I'll look at me with the raised eyebrows. But anyways, 23 feels like a lot. Like you said, they just don't feel like, it doesn't seem like they have gotten all their players together and that they've quite figured everything out yet. And maybe later on in Big 12 play, maybe they do figure it out and they end up, like you said, being better than worst in the Big 12, but definitely not a game that I would say has me quaking and that I'm terrified of, but definitely 23 does feel a bit high on that one.
Yeah, I would agree. It's eerie how similar our notes are on this stuff. It's almost like we hosted a podcast here the last 10 calendar years. But it is a tricky, I don't think this is an NCAA tournament team at full health. I don't think this is a top half Big 12 team at full health. But also, I fully agree. I do not think this is the 125th best team with Kirk Carissa, with Noah Farrakhan, certainly with Raekwon Battle. I think the development that would have broke me if I was a West Virginia fan is Jesse Edwards getting hurt. Because Jesse Edwards was genuinely on a not that great team because it had so many guys missing, not to mention a lot of guys leaving late because of all the stuff with Huggins and guys kind of getting a free pass to transfer elsewhere, including Joe Toussaint, who's at Texas Tech now, and there's a guy at UNC. There's a bunch of other guys. It's a kind of a mess of a roster situation just because the situation kind of created a mess of the roster situation. But Jesse Edwards was genuinely good. And then he's hurt. And now they have all these key guys back. And Jesse Edwards, who was good on a bad team, is now probably, at least it's not a season-ending thing. I think he's projected to be back mid to late January. I think it was a broken wrist. But even still, it really does feel like the most cursed season. But I think still in the interim, this will be a better team. I don't think this is going to be the last place team in the Big 12, certainly after seeing how competitive they were with an Ohio State team that looks like they've got a tournament kind of resume on them. And yeah, it's kind of tricky to figure them out. I mean, Raekwon Battle, I think, is the matchup I'm going to keep my eyes on the closest. A 6'5", 3-level scorer, averaged just under 18 points per game last year for a Montana State team that won the Big Sky. You said, Dustin, he's been extremely prolific in the 3 games that he's been eligible to play for the Mountaineers. There's also Quinn Slazinski, 6'9" stretch forward, played for Rick Pitino at Iona, a guy who can, I think, certainly hit the shots from the outside if the Cougs leave him open. Carissa, who's a veteran multi-year starting point guard, some very good Arizona teams. I'm going to shock you both by actually saying nice things about Kirk Carissa here. A big-time hater from his time with the Arizona Wildcats program, but I'm just going to point out that he wasn't a bad point guard. He was bad for a top 5, top 10 team. I always thought that he was he's a top 55, top 60 point guard surrounded by guys who should be on a national championship contender. And they seemingly giving him this undeserved stats because his first name was the same as Arizona and Chicago Bulls legend Steve Kerr. But for West Virginia, a team in desperate need of a point guard, the guy's man from heaven. The guy is good enough to be at minimum a point guard for a bottom half of the Big 12, but still salty Big 12 team. I think this West Virginia team is. If I had to say what I think this team's Ken Pom ranking is with all of these guys healthy, I think it's probably somewhere in the low 70s, high 60s, which Cougs should beat them at home. I think the Cougs match up well in some key ways. This is a bad 3-point shooting team, which I don't know if any of the new arrivals change. Battle is a good scorer. I don't think Battle's best level of scoring is from the perimeter. Slazinski can be a good 3-point shooter, but hasn't really done it against the better teams on West Virginia's schedule. I do think, again, Battle, Carissa, and Farrakhan all make this a better offensive team, and I think make their offensive numbers better than what the season statistics, whether they're advanced or standard, would tell you. I fully agree with both of you. I think 23 points is way more than what the final margin here will be. but also I think this is one the Cougs should certainly expect to win by a decent margin.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of in agreement that this is probably a better team than they've looked, but still a bottom half of the conference team, which is a game you expect to win at home. But like, I mean, like you can't understate, or you can't, I guess, underscore enough, I guess, maybe the extent to which just like a team that believes in itself, that has talent, that just like that has nothing to lose because its season is essentially, they're not going to win an at-large bid, even if they play like one in Big 12 play, because the rest of their resume is so horrendous. They've got nothing to lose. Right? They're just going to come out swinging, trying to just like cause havoc the rest of the year. And those teams are dangerous. Some of those games get scary. So hopefully that doesn't happen to us on Saturday. But nonetheless, that's, like I said, it's your first taste of Big 12 play. And like I said, you're not in the American anymore. Even the quote unquote, worst team in the conference per Ken Palm or whatever is still a team that is salty and you need to take seriously.
I mean, volleyball's a perfect example, right? Even the low tier games are games that you got to bring it. Coach Herrera said that, right? Like you got to bring at least a B+, A- game every single time, because this team has played some good teams close. Played Virginia close. They played Ohio State close. Those are teams that U of H is better than, but these guys can still show up and make you think about it a little bit.
Return to Houston for our former head coach James Dickey, who is on West Virginia staff as an assistant. No word on whether they'll be showing a highlight package of us losing to San Jose State and Rice's worst team in the last 20 years.
Dude, he beat UConn the year they won the national title.
That's right.
He
Bobby,
beat
I was
UConn
there
the year they won.
for it.
The three of us were, because I remember we said before the game, we were texting and we were like, is there a way we can pull as much money as possible and bet on the spread? Because it was like
single digits.
Yeah, it was like 9.5. We're like, that's the dumbest spread ever. And then we beat a money line. What?
That is why you should take West Virginia seriously on Saturday, because Houston,
we don't know
James
anything.
Dickey beat the flipping national champs.
Exactly.
Moving.
All right.
Houston's first Big 12 road game will be on Tuesday, as they will be at the Iowa State Cyclones. Would you guys believe I have some thoughts on this one?
You don't say, bud.
Houston gets its first taste of Hilton Magic on Tuesday as they head up to Ames. They'll face an Iowa State team that looks to be very much on an upward trajectory under TJ Otzelberger. 3 short years ago, Iowa State went 0-18 in Big 12 play under Steve Prohm. They brought in Otzelberger. He had them in the Sweet 16 the next year. Last year saw them lose in the first round of the NCAA tournament as a 6th seed, but it was a stronger team, stronger season overall. And then this year they brought in a top 10 nationally ranked recruiting class and appear to have an even better version of the team than they had in their previous year. And if you're a Houston fan, you should really appreciate the way that they've built under Otzelberger, because it's going to sound familiar. They've done it by playing awesome defense, by taking care of the ball, and by rebounding really well. Otzelberger's first year, they jumped from 135th to 5th in defensive efficiency nationally. They were number 8 last year. They're number 3 right now, 2 spots behind the Cougs in the current season. And kind of the scary thing is, like, they got to a Sweet 16 basically just by defense alone. They had a bad offensive team. They were kind of a mediocre rebounding team his first season, and they've gotten just like a fairly large step better each of the last 2 seasons in terms of offensive efficiency and in terms of rebounding, to the point where they're now a good offensive team and a fantastic rebounding team. And they're still playing that phenomenal defense. They're still taking excellent care of the ball. They're still rebounding like crazy. So I think it is noteworthy that while the metrics love Iowa State, and I stand by everything that I just said, fanboying about the overall trajectory of the program under TJ Otzelberger, the resume this year, you have to say, is still pretty thin. So Big 12 play is going to be huge for them. They've only played 4 top 100 teams in non-conference play, which is like the same number that U of H played. And then went 2-2 in those games, losses to Virginia Tech and Texas A&M, wins over VCU and Iowa. I will point out they absolutely stomped Iowa. I just want to go ahead and get that on the record.
You feel better now?
I do. I feel very good.
Good about
that. Frey McCaffrey.
But notably, the rest of their schedule, man, I just talked about how Houston played a lot of like actually decent teams, even with their cupcakes. Iowa State did the opposite of that. When they went cupcake all the way. They literally haven't played anybody ranked between 88 and 213 on the season. Other than those 4 games against good teams, it was brutal. They played 6 games against teams ranked 290 or worse. Just not great. So, they have a lot of work to do in conference play. I guess everyone does. Everyone has 18 Big 12 games ahead of them, so everyone's got work to do, but maybe Iowa State even a little bit more so to kind of justify those metrics and that very fawning intro I got them. So guys, I have some more roster thoughts to go here, but Bobby, I want to pass this one off to you before I completely just talk for a solid 10 minutes straight about this Iowa State team. What are your thoughts about?
Yeah, it'll just be Sam and I just like
twiddling your thumbs.
All right, cool. Yeah, just twiddling our thumbs. He did great. He did great.
Pass it off.
No, big thing that stands out to me with them is the fact they can score now. Obviously, it's against a soft schedule, like you eloquently said. But even against Texas A&M and Virginia Tech, they still put up close to 70. I think they put up 62 versus Virginia Tech, 69. Nice against A&M, and overall, they can kind of put the ball in the bucket, and like you also pointed out, their defensive efficiency is still really good. They know how to defend, and the Cougs have a tendency in games to go cold for a couple of minutes, 3-4 minutes at a time. And this is going to be the first real test of, if you face a defense that can really lock you down and prevent you from scoring, can you also prevent them from scoring? So something I find kind of interesting about that.
I'm glad you acknowledged, Dustin, they've played a lot of bad teams, but no debate this is Otzelberger's best offensive team at Iowa State, and certainly hasn't taken any noticeable step back on the defensive end, where this was a really, really good program there the last couple of seasons. And I think some of that's development of returning guys. I don't think there's any better example of that. I'm sure you'll talk about him plenty than your returning sophomore point guard, Tamin Lipsey, who I think was definitely promising last year, but struggled to score once Big 12 play rolled around. But a lot of that is also new faces the staffs brought in from the portal and the high school ranks. And I'll talk about the portal guys. I'll let you gush about their two awesome high school recruits, one of whom has just had an unbelievable start to the season, Dustin. But that trio of portal guys I think is really important. Keyshawn Gilbert from UNLV, who Otzelberger recruited there but never got to coach in Vegas. Jackson Pavelski from Wofford, and Curtis Jones from Buffalo. Not a great perimeter shooter, but I think Gilbert has made this team better offensively, and certainly has, I think, strengthened their defensive credentials, doing all the stuff there you'd want. And Pavelski has, I think, added some much-needed perimeter scoring ability as well. But I think their biggest contributions come from guys from the high school ranks. So I will let you gush about Milan, last name I can't consistently pronounce, because he's been one of the best freshmen. Momcilovic.
I don't appreciate. I thought this was family friendly.
He's one of the best freshmen in the country, but I'll let you, the secondary Cyclone fan, gush about the season he's had so far.
Yeah, really impressed with him. I'm glad. It's funny that you teed me up for that, because he was one of the guys that I was going to talk the longest about. I'm really intrigued by that front court and the test that they present for Houston. They've got two quality veteran bigs in Robert Jones and Trey King, but also kind of that freshman in Milan Momcilovic, who really is making me rue the absence of Terrence Arsenault. Momcilovic is 6'8", but shoots over 50% of his shots from three. He's sometimes on the court with Jones and King at the same time, and plays as an honest wing, but it's usually out there as kind of like a hybrid four next to one of those two guys in the front court. And when he's out there, I mean, he's someone you have to be draping at all times on the perimeter. You just cannot give him a fraction of an inch of space. That's not necessarily someone you want to have maybe like Wani on, but that is to me, that's the perfect Terrence Arsenault matchup. Like, that's the guy you want Arsenault out there. To me, Momcilovic, as soon as he comes on the court, Arsenault is out there to, that feels like the perfect defensive assignment for him. So for me, I think he is someone that is going to be a big test, because he has been, he showed the ability to score points in bunches. He showed the ability to knock down threes if you give him even an inch of room. He's shown the ability to kind of feed off of the Hilton Coliseum crowd. So he's someone that definitely I'm worried about. But then, also in that backcourt, you mentioned them, Sam, but Tamin Lipsey, just made a huge sophomore leap this year at point guard. Keyshawn Gilbert coming in from UNLV. Both of these guys can get to the basket. Both of these guys get to the line a lot. They create a lot of fouls. They can both create for others. They're both fantastic havoc creators on defense. I don't think, Houston's played some good guards this year. I don't think they've played a team that has two guards as good as Tamin Lipsey and Keyshawn Gilbert are for Iowa State. So, this is going to be a tough one. I think a team that can test you in the backcourt. It's a team that can test you in the front court. This is one of the toughest environments in college basketball to play in. Even when Iowa State's not very good, that's true. And this team is quite good. So, Houston's one road game on the year this far. Remember that the number is still one, which is kind of a wild thing to think about. And that was a game against Xavier, who, Houston led most of the way, but that's also a team that got real close and gave Houston a heck of a ball game down the stretch. And this is a better opponent in a tougher atmosphere, and you're minus a player who gave you 13 minutes, quality minutes in that Xavier win. So Iowa State beat Kansas, UT Austin, Baylor, and TCU by double digits at home last year. That's 2 top 10 teams and 2 top 25 teams. They beat at home. Not just beat at home by double digits. So I think this is a huge win if you can get it. It's a loss. There'd be no shame in taking. If I'm Vegas, I'm probably favoring Houston by a point or two. But to me, this one feels pretty close to a toss-up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think what worries me, I think what worries me most is Iowa State's been really good at getting the free throw line, and by nature, this Cougar team is going to get called for a lot of fouls, and we know how that goes when you play on the road. You won't get the benefit of the whistle, and if U of H has a number of key guys in foul trouble, that's going to make an already extremely difficult task winning at Hilton Coliseum, like you kind of talked about there a moment ago, Dustin. Basically impossible to accomplish. I'm going to dust one of my favorites on, an old favorite on this podcast. This is absolutely excited if we win by any margin of points game. I mean,
if we put that in my notes.
If we beat West Virginia by 1, I'm not jumping off a cliff, but I'm not going to be wild about that as a single game result. You give me a 1-point win in Ames next Tuesday, I am fucking ecstatic, fellas. Like that's the level of how good this team is. And I think U of H, you're going to need an A or an at worst A- offensive game to win this one at Hilton. Not that this team hasn't played in good atmospheres. I mean, one of the most proud moments for me as a fan of this program was the way U of H went to a sold-out Virginia last year and just dominated them in a way that you don't really see Virginia, that program, get dominated. Iowa State is every bit, if not more, of a test. And I think what I liked about last year's team is last year's team really raised their game to another level when they played away from Houston. We only have one data point. I think it was a pretty solid one, the one over Xavier, but this is a much, much, much tougher opponent. So excited to see it. Like I said, Dustin, no shame if this is a loss. Like, breaking news here, this team is going to take several blemishes at minimum in Big 12 play. That's just the nature of this conference. But I mean, how much more excited are we to watch this game, to talk about this game than, oh, hey, we're going to East Carolina. I hope that game isn't close after the first 15 minutes, it's a whole different level. And I think we're all excited about it.
On some level, it's better to lose at Iowa State than it is to win at East Carolina, just because you're getting to play in those games that matter.
No doubt.
All right. So we're going to move along from the men's team to a team we're a little bit less excited about. And that is, unfortunately, the Cougar women's basketball program, who lost their Big 12 opener to Texas Tech by a final score of 79-71. The Cougars trailed 31-12 after the first quarter and actually outscored the Red Raiders in each of the remaining quarters. But unfortunately, you actually don't get any credit for winning more quarters than the other team. In terms of things that I liked, Houston got big scoring games from a couple of forwards, and Bria Patterson, who had 19, and Malia Johnson, who had 16. They were, actually getting some non-transition offense, which has always been a struggle for this team, by getting the ball inside of those two. And I like that this team kept fighting after that brutal first quarter. I said in the preview, this was your second, it's kind of like your second chance at the MTSU game, that you're playing a similarly talented team at home. And it kind of looked like Houston was going to go the same way that they did against MTSU and just get absolutely blown out after one quarter, but they didn't. But, and here comes the big but, it still boils down to an 8-point home loss to the 7th best Big 12 team. And even that 8-point margin flattered Houston. It was double digits pretty much the entire way. Houston hit 2 free throws with 5 seconds to go. 8 was as close as it got after that first quarter. And this is one of those few Big 12 games where your full court press thing may have had an outside chance at working, and Houston actually forced 22 turnovers, but they committed 22 turnovers right back, so it just didn't really matter. So I mean, just looking where this team is after this loss, you're flat out not going to beat UT Austin, Baylor, K-State, West Virginia, or TCU, period. That's 7 losses plus the one you just took. If you go 500 in your other games the rest of the way, which feels like an optimistic best case scenario, that optimistic best case scenario would mean finishing 5-13 in Big 12 play. So I don't want to overreact to one loss to open Big 12 play, but I guess that's kind of where I'm at after this one.
Yeah, I wouldn't be mad about.
Go ahead, Sam.
I wouldn't be mad about losing this game, in the abstract, but man, just not looking competitive out of the gate there. This is the first ever Big 12 program you're going to face off against. And you gave up 31 points in the first quarter. You were on pace. Not that they ever would have like shot that well for the entirety of a game, but and I think they were on pace to score over 120 points on you. Like it's bad. That's really bad. And that one of the core strengths of last year's team was that for their struggles, they were a pretty good defensive team. Like they won some games being able to shut down opponents, even of the level of, I would say, this year's Texas Tech team. And that's been the concerning thing for me. I think this is a better offensive team. I mean, you saw it in this game. It's some really strong individual efforts. I think chief among them, Bria Patterson, Malia Johnson. So I don't want to entirely throw that out. I'm not going to entirely throw out the fact that you did, I mean, relative to last year, look better scoring the basketball. And this one have looked better scoring the basketball times this year, but you look so much worse defensively that it almost feels like that improvement's for naught. It almost feels like that improvement's kind of been canceled out by just the inability to do things in the defensive end like you at least were able to do last year. And just I would have liked this one to be more competitive at home against Texas Tech. It was not a bad team, but I'd be surprised if they were any better than 7th, 8th, or 9th this year. And at home, I would have liked that to be a bit more competitive. And like you said, Dustin, I think 8 points flatters them. Like I don't get any satisfaction of like we made it close late. I mean, I'm glad the ladies haven't quit on the staff, and I've never believed that they would. But I mean, for all intents and purposes, this game was over after a quarter. There was time for it to change, and they did make it closer. But I mean, you dig yourself a 19-point hole. There's really no magic way to get out of that, and it's been frustrating to me how at times uncompetitive this Cougar team has been against decent teams in the schedule. We're not even talking like top 5 and top 10, like Middle Tennessee, Wazoo, Texas Tech, all solid programs. I'm not taking a shot at them. I would have liked at least like 2 of those games to be more competitive than we saw. Like, really, what out of those 3 games, what would you call this one, like half competitive?
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And I think that's kind of disappointing to me.
Yeah, the big thing for me, just kind of looking at the stats and watching this game a little bit. I was working, so I was kind of following Game Tracker on it a little bit, and then I tried to go back and watch it. And this first quarter, it was just absolutely brutal. What's the big calling card of this team? Defense. They don't let you score, and the problem has always been that they don't score. Well, we field in the first quarter for 76.92%. Meanwhile, we're out here shooting 35. Look at the second quarter when the Cougs started to really start to fight back. They only outscored Texas Tech by 1 point in the second quarter, despite putting up 8 more shots. They went the Cougs went 7 of 18 versus 6 of 10 for Texas Tech. You had 8 more shots and you only made 1 more basket. So it seems like the defense was working, but again, this team just plays with a lid on the bucket. And I don't know if it's because the defense, they get going in transition and they miss layups. What's happening? Again, I'm not the guy, just like we say in football, I can look and go, there's a problem. I don't necessarily know how to fix it, but you can't put up 8 more shots than the other team and only outscore them by 1, especially when you start off down 19. You'll never come back in a game that way.
Yeah, I don't like to call out individual players. So I want to be clear. I'm framing this as a criticism of this coaching staff here. But, you got a player in Layla Blair who came out of high school, was this big time recruit, top 100 recruit that Houston got, was already scoring double digits as a freshman. She's in her 4th year in the program. The 3 times Houston's played someone against the Pulse, Middle Tennessee State shot poorly, scored 9 points. Wazoo shot poorly, scored 10 points. This game, I think, shot 2 of 9 and scored 10 points. I'm not holding everyone to the Kelvin Sampson impossible standard of you should just get this large step better each year. But over 3 years in the program, we should have seen from a player who's immensely talented, from a player who I don't think anyone would argue is anything less than 110% bought in on making herself the best player that she can be, being the best teammate that she can be, doing everything that the staff wants of her. Why isn't she better than she is in her 4th year in the program?
It really feels like a system thing. The system's not built to have people who just go out and you focus so heavy on your training, your strength and conditioning to make sure you can be okay to run the court like that for 40 minutes. And it just seems like the system that we run doesn't allow for somebody like Layla Blair to set up an offensive set and run it and get to the basket and do what she needs to do.
The obvious also, that's a system problem. Like it's a system problem. It's a coaching problem. Like you said, that Layla Blair hasn't developed into what we saw as a freshman, which was, I think, one of the best guards that's come through this program since we've been Cougar fans, and we just haven't seen the development since then. And buddy, it does not get easier this coming week of games.
Yeah, especially in the next couple of games, it sure doesn't. We did mention on the last episode, because we didn't know if we were going to get this one in before or after the K-State game, but we did at least kind of talk about Houston, who is going to play at Kansas State on Wednesday. Notably, since our last episode, they opened up Big 12 play with a 25-point road win over the Cincinnati team that is currently the only Big 12 team ranked below Houston in the net rankings. So, won't go too much over my notes from last week's episode, and also because there's not a lot of point in going too deep in this one. Houston's playing one of the top 10 teams in the country on the road. This one's going to be kind of rough.
Yeah, this K-State team beat the Cougs comfortably in Manhattan last year without Ayoka Lee, the All-American post player. Like, with Ayoka Lee, I think this might get worse. This is a team that beat Iowa and Caitlin Clark. Like, this is a really good basketball team, and as we kind of talked about the Tech game, this is not a team playing a really good basketball team right now.
Yep, probably not going to be the prettiest game the Cougs play this year, but I am hopeful. What if it happens, boys? What if it happens?
The women's basketball, after playing at K-State on Wednesday, will get the reward of then getting to play at Baylor on Saturday. The Bears are undefeated. They have wins over the teams who are currently ranked number 3 and number 4 in the net rankings in Utah early in the season, and then their Big 12 opener where they beat the UT Austin Longhorns. This one will also, maybe even more so than the K-State game, be a bloodbath, and I don't have too many more notes than that because, I don't know how much you need to hear me describe future carnage.
Quick aside, I want you guys to both, Bobby, you might already know what this looks like just because your family lives in Waco. Have you seen, either of you, what the new Baylor Arena looks like?
Yes. Did you see Scott Drew opened it with prayer?
Shocker. Leave that one on the side there. I saw someone tweet this, and they're just like, this looks like kind of an overgrown version of the Tulane gym. And I saw it, and I was just like, yes. If they stacked a second deck on the Tulane gym, the same kind of general green vibe too, and I was just like, I couldn't unsee it. And I've never seen a game at Tulane's arena, but I've probably watched over our time in the American Conference USA at least 20 U of H men's and women's basketball games there, and I was just like, I can see it. Looks like a nice arena. I'll give them credit for that. Yeah.
One of the good jokes I saw on Twitter was like everyone else in Waco, Baylor's moving into a barn dominium. I thought that was really good. I was like, that's good. That's a good joke.
I really thought you were the Scott Drew thing that you were teeing up for Chip and Joanna both draining a corner 3 to break in the new place.
Nope. Scott Drew tweeted, "Is there a better way to open up something like, is there a better way to open up an arena than this?" And it's like everyone standing around the circle praying.
It would be funny, but it would be the funniest thing if Dave Bliss crashed that. It's just like, hey, I used to. No one wants you here. All right, I'm done.
Yeah,
I'm done.
It says the best way to break in a new arena and then prayer hand emojis and then the 100 emoji. So Scott Drew keeping it fresh with recruits with emojis. So
clearly,
did want to mention, I guess, because we probably will be podcasting maybe during or right after the this game. I do have some notes on BYU next Wednesday. This is another one of this is one of those winnable games. This is one of those games, unlike Baylor and K-State, that actually falls into the winnable category. The other Cougars are 10-4 on the year, but kind of like our Cougars, it's against a fairly hollow strength of schedule. They opened up Big 12 play with a 14-point road loss to a top 25 TCU team, which is honestly probably a closer loss than I expect Houston to manage when they visit Fort Worth. But BYU currently 91 in the net, 4 spots ahead of Houston. So This is one of those games for Houston where, if you want to be just bad and not embarrassingly bad in the Big 12, this is one of those wins you got to get against a fairly winnable team at home. Houston, like I said, I don't want to sound too confident. They're probably going to be 0-3 coming into this one. And after that, you face TCU and teams that you are probably not going to beat. So this is kind of your last gasp chance at not opening conference play 0-6. So fingers crossed on that one.
Yeah, I didn't do a ton of research on BYU. You were out here thinking ahead, but they did play Utah to 19 points, and we haven't played a team of Utah's caliber to 19 points. So while it is probably our best bet for a win to not start 0-6, still concerning.
Yeah, man. I don't want to say any game like 4 games into conference play, which just won't be as a must win, but like given that this is in Houston, I'm gonna say it, guys. This is a must win.
All right.
When do we? No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you have anything else, because I was just
all I was gonna say is, man, I'm like sitting here looking through the schedule, the women's basketball schedule, and I'm like, we may not win one.
Like,
legitimately, we may not win.
That is pretty. We get them twice. I think we get 2 shots. No, do we only get them at home?
Yep,
no.
You only get them at home.
We get Cincinnati at home, man. January 3rd. That's
God willing, we could win that one.
We get them at home. Fingers crossed, buddy.
I don't want to go 0-18. That would be
me neither, man. in every sport, I'm like, just win a couple. Just give me 1 or 2. Yes. Like, I knew going into this year that it was going to be a rough year, but I'm just like, just give me a couple in Big 12 play. Just
not last, please. Just not last in a sports year. That would be good for me.
I was gonna say, ideally not last place would be even nicer, but man, even last place would be like, it doesn't quite as bad. 2-16 in last place hits a little bit less harshly than 0-18.
Yep.
What a fun state that we're in. That's I know. And again, to be clear, the 3 of us the rest of the year will be cheering for this team to make us look like complete idiots for
I hope I'm 100% wrong.
For hypothesizing that they might go 0-18, that feels on the table, but I think it's hard to argue with the way their 3 results against top 50-ish teams have gone when that's kind of almost all of your games going forward.